What's going on, gamers? I am merkaba18. Today, I'm bringing you another endgame build guide for Diablo 4. This one is pretty fun, and I'm going to be honest with you. Everything you've been told about Druid this season is a little bit of a lie. It's a little bit misleading, and we're going to walk through why. So let me first of all say that Spiritborn is above and beyond everything else right now, and then to a lesser degree, you've got some other classes that are right there, like 3 or 4 tiers below them. And then you've got, some middling to decent endgame builds. They're going to probably be able to handle most everything in this game. They just don't get as much attention because Spiritborn is doing so much more than everyone else. And this is one of those builds. This is called the Petting Zoo build, and it involves Druid companions. Before we get started, I want to make sure everybody's subscribed to the channel here. Hit that sub button if you enjoy the content. And we are live every single day playing Diablo 4. There are drops available on the channel as well. We're going to walk through skills. We're going to walk through talent tree, paragon board, mercenary, spirit boons, gear, all of it right here in the video. I will link to the description of this build down below so that you have access to it. But go ahead and let's dive right in. So first of all, let's talk about spirit boons before we get to the skill tree. So for the deer, you're going to go damage reduction from elites, super important, especially in the pit. Wolf, you're going to go lucky strikes have a chance to reset the cooldown of your companion skills. And you want to constantly have your cooldowns available to you in this build. So anytime you get that lucky hit reset on those, you are doing good. For eagle, where you're choosing eagle is going to be your double boon. You're going to go increase crit chance and increased crit damage. Two very important elements of the stat. That's one of the most important buckets, if you will, for this build is crit and crit damage. So remember that as we move through here. And then masochistic. Every time you shapeshift, crit strikes with a shapeshifting skill have a chance to heal you for 5% of your health. Very important. This is a very high survivability build. And it's going to take a little bit of work to get it into tier 4. But once you do, it really does kind of take off a little bit. And it's really good for leveling as well. There's a leveling build version that I'll link to as well in the description. Now, let's talk about the skill tree. So first things first, we are going Maul down to Enhanced Maul. Now, we're not using a basic skill or a core skill in this particular, or no, we are using a core skill, just not a basic skill in this. So you're only using those 2 points just to move forward. By the way, going forward, I hope that they add some passives in here that allow you to do a non-basic build if you want to, without having to choose and waste these 2 points. But let's talk about Shred. So we're going to go Shred 1 through 5 there, all the way down to Primal for that increased crit strike damage, while also giving you a dash, which gives you some great mobility. There's some attack speed and heals there as well. Attack speed is the single most important stat in this build, by the way. Next would be crit strike, but attack speed is very, very important. Predatory Instinct gives you crit strike chance against close enemies. So we're going to go 3 out of 3 there. And then down through here, we're going Blood Howl 1 all the way through for the attack speed bonus and for the cooldown reduction. Whenever you get a kill, it reduces the cooldown, so you're going to get a lot of free heals with this build. We're going Debilitating Roar for a decrease to damage from all enemies that are hit by it, like 40%. Super helpful for the survivability element of this build, which is where I think it really, really shines. This is a very tanky build. Increased damage while Debilitating Roar is active, and you're going to get Fortify for 22% of your max life. So you're going to have a lot of like barrier up and a lot of Fortify here. So Backlash increases all damage for 5 seconds after using defensive skills, which will be a lot because they're going to be resetting a lot. So you're going to gain a lot of increased damage from multiplicative bonuses there. Non-physical resistances. One of the most important things in this game is resistances, so that helps. Damage reduction after using defensive skills. Easy choice there. And then here is where most of the damage is going to come from in this build. Summon 2 wolves that bite enemies and deal damage. And then you can actively direct them to focus on a specific enemy, dealing an additional damage, also making them unstoppable. We're going to go 5 out of 5 there, all the way through into the immobilized damage boost. So there's going to be a lot of crowd control within this build, so you're going to get a lot of bonuses there. And then crit strikes, your wolves gain 2% or 25% attack speed for 3 seconds. There's a very, very important passive later that we're going to talk about, but again, you're going to want all that attack speed all the time. Humanity gives you increased damage while in human form, which is you're going to be shifting in and out. And so you're going to gain a lot of moments where you're getting that passive. Increase 9% damage while moving or while healthy, and increase the damage while above 100% movement speed, which should be a lot of the time as well. Then we got companion skills, deal bonus damage, and we're going with ravens, not to put it on our bar. This is very critical. We're not putting ravens on our bar. We're going for the passives. It will give you a periodic damage every 3 seconds. We're not using the active there. All right, let's come down to Hurricane, which is going to deal 356% damage over 8 seconds. And you're going to take less damage from them, which is also going to increase your flexibility in terms of taking damage. Just to give you a sense of how tanky this build is, without fully min-maxing this build, I was walking around tanking like pit level 130 mobs with this build. Now, you're not going to want to do that forever, but it can definitely handle that level of like damage increase. So one of the tankier builds in the game that isn't Spiritborn. Very, very tanky. They are also slowed, which is going to trigger some of the crowd control bonuses earlier. We're going to gain poisoned enemies are slow, again, triggering some more of the bonuses. And then crit strikes increase your damage as poisoning. So you're going to get some poisoning damage there. There's some other poisoning elements that we're going to talk about, but you're going to want to have as many poisoned enemies. Even if it's not doing a lot of damage, it's triggering some bonuses later into the Paragon board. So that's why we're choosing that. Your companions deal critical strike bonus to poisoned enemies. Well, so that's part of the reason there. And then let's go ahead and talk about our alt. Now, this is a little bit of an unconventional pick here, but we'll talk about why we're doing this in just a minute. Cataclysm is going to do a bunch of damage over time and create twisters around you. You're going to want to use this as often as possible. Cataclysm's duration is increased by 4 seconds. And then lightning makes enemies vulnerable, which is going to trigger the next damage bucket. We're going 3 out of 3 on Catastrophe, which increases your damage after using an alt, and you're going to be using it pretty much all the time. You're going to gain that bonus. And then we're going Quick Shift for the shifting bonus. And then shifting gives you damage reduction, and then Werewolf. So going into Werebear gives you damage. Werewolf is Shred. Werebear is Debilitating Roar. So you're shifting in and out constantly, and you're gaining both of these bonuses. And then they are doubled when both are active. So you're gaining a lot of heightened sense bonus there. And then 1 out of 3 for the Fortify here. And then this is a new passive, probably one of the best new passives in the game. Your companion skills each gain 1 additional companion. So you're going to have an extra wolf and an extra raven if you were using it, but you're not using the active here. And they deal increased damage. And then you also gain all of the passive effects of the ravens and the wolves. So you're going to gain Poison Creeper here as well, which is going to also make enemies poisoned. So that is the Paragon board. Let's talk about the skill or the armor. Now, in this version of the game, I'm going to move my camera over here just so you guys can see everything. My face is cut off a little bit, but I'd rather you see the gear here. So here, we're going to be going Harlequin's Quest. Now, this is the Mythic version. Again, there is a leveling non-Mythic version that is a easier accessibility to it. But this one is Mythic version only. So Harlequin Crest. And you want to hit on the cooldown reduction and or on the max life on this one. If you do hit the GA. Then Shroud of False Death is if you've dealt damage in the last 2 seconds, you gain health. Shroud of Death is the intrinsic, is really what you're using it. And you're gaining a bunch of resource gen and passive bonuses there. And you're going to gain a ton of max life there as well. So Shroud of False Death, one of the best single chess pieces in the game. We're going Stampede, which gives you an additional companion, and they also deal bonus damage. Storm's Companion turns your wolves into Storm Wolves, and they gain the Storm Howl ability, which is a new ability for them. This also gives you plus to the ranks on wolves. I think at this point, I'm at 25 or 26, even more with passive bonuses, ranks to wolves, which is insane. Then we're going Yen's Blessing to give you the automatic cast on some of these cooldowns. Almost all of our abilities are cooldowns, so you're going to get a bunch of extra casts there. And then Shepherd's Aspect, which gives you an additional bonus per companion that is active. We're going Aspect of the Alpha because now they're wolves and they do more damage. So, and then they can spread rabies as well. So they're doing a little bit of poison damage there. Mjolnir Ring is one of the most important pieces of this build because, as you will learn as you're trying to put this build together, there is no basic skill here. So you're not generating enough spirit a lot of times to cast anything other than your cooldowns. But Mjolnir solves that problem. While Cataclysm is active, which should be almost 100% of the time, you are gaining spirit. You gain unlimited spirit, excuse me, and you deal increased damage. So that also gives you all the things you want, which is like Tempest, movement speed, crit chance, willpower, and it's going to basically allow you to continue to cast your core skill. Moonrage is a new one, which gives you a wolf companion on summon, which gives you up to 3 additional wolves. So I think at one point I had 12 wolves or something like that fighting for me, which is pretty crazy. Now, there are 2 different versions of this build, one that involves another mythic and then one that does not. In the non-mythic version, you want to use a 2-handed with Shepherd, which gives you the damage per minion. In the other one, you can use the one that summons wolves for you, and or Doombringer, if you want. Doombringer here, and then gain an offhand as well. Either one is really viable, just depending on how deep into the mythics you want to go. And then in terms of armor and runes, let's talk about this as I move my camera back over just a little bit and then move this up. So this one is going to use Yul and Cry, which is a vortex that pulls enemies in, and then using a skill cooldown, which is going to be all of the time. And then we've got Tam and Say, which is also going to summon more spirits for you. Which gives you the non-wolf version of, or non-werewolf version of your wolves. You're going to end up with a lot of extra ones. You're going to go emeralds in your weapons, sapphires in your armor, and then depending on what you have in your gear and don't have in your gear, you're going to want to use armor and or resistances to make up the gap based on what you're missing. All right, so the other part of this that's really important to remember is that cooldown reduction is very important on tempering. So like duration of Cataclysm, cooldown reduction on ultimate, minion attack speed, minion attack damage. Those are the things you're going to temper into. So like, for example, here we went Wolves cooldown and crit strike damage. Here we went critical strike and Wolves cooldown. Here we went attack speed. Here we went crit strike and Wolves attack speed. Chance for wolves to deal double damage on that one. So those are the kinds of ones you're going to want to target. Now, let's dive into the heftiest part of the build. Actually, let's do this. Mercenaries first. Talk about mercenaries. You're going to be using a new mercenary in my builds this time, Variana, who is the Berserker. You're going to go all the way down the left side of the build here. You're going to get bleed, attack speed, bleed, and unstoppable, and then more attack speed is the main reason you're using her, is for that attack speed boost. And then we're going to do Aldokin, and we're going to attach their slow to basically any ability you want to, but I've actually attached it to wolves here. So, because that's the one you're going to be using the most often. So anytime you get that slow, it's going to trigger bonuses that we'll talk about here in the Paragon board. Okay, so let's talk about the Paragon board. I'm not going to dive all the way through it because I'll link to it so that you guys can just follow along. But the basics are the glyphs. So let's talk about which glyphs we're using. First one is Territorial. Then we're going Keeper for the non-physical companion damage. Then we're going Spirit for the crit strike chance and damage. And then we're going Headhunter for damage to elites. And then we're going Wilds for the passive portion of companion skills that deal additional damage. Now, all of those are going to also have different multiplicative bonuses. So those are going to be added on top of any other multiplicative bonuses that already exist. So keep those. Those are the 4 glyphs that you're doing. The boards that we're using are as follows. We are using Untamed first. Second, we are going to be using Constricting Tendrils here on the right. Now, we are not grabbing Constricting Tendrils because it doesn't add enough multiplicative damage to make it worth going for those, even those extra 3 or 4 points. But again, I will link to all of these so you can follow along below. And then we've got Wilds, and we're doing that one on Ancestral Guidance, so that you get the extra bonus, multiplicative bonus on top of use after using a certain amount of spirit. And then for our final legendary node, we are going Heightened Malice. When there are 3 or more poisons nearby, you deal increased damage. So that's why you're getting poison passives on certain things. And keep in mind, you're gaining a lot of extra skill ranks because of Harley Quinn's crest. So there's going to be a lot more poison passives, but you're mostly doing that so that you can trigger this. And then any of the crowd control bonuses that you get are also going to help trigger some of those additional bonuses. All right, so there's the build. I, again, will link it down below. This one has been super fun to build out, and it's fun to do something other than Spearborn for once. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you again for the next build.